My sister Cindy walked into that courtroom with the kind of smirk that could cut glass, absolutely certain she was about to rip my childhood home right out from under me. She handed a document to the judge with a theatrical flourish, thinking it was her golden ticket to $500,000. It wasn't. Instead, that single piece of paper detonated a bomb that had been quietly ticking in our family vault for over 50 years. In that moment, that single earth-shattering moment, the house, the money, the entire bitter inheritance war became irrelevant. This was no longer about who deserved what. This was about an identity that was stolen from me before I even took my first breath, and a truth so devastating it would erase everything I thought I knew about myself. The fluorescent lights in that county courthouse were unforgiving, casting harsh shadows across Cindy's perfectly made-up face as she sat across the aisle from me. 20 years. That's how long it had been since we'd really looked at each other. Not just glanced, but truly looked. And now here we were, sisters turned adversaries, fighting over the bones of our parents' estate like vultures circling a carcass. I never wanted this. Never wanted the lawyers, the accusations, the way her voice turned to ice when she said my name. But Cindy? She wanted blood. She wanted that house, or its cash equivalent. And she didn't care what she had to destroy to get it. As I watched her lawyer shuffle papers with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this dance 1,000 times, I felt the weight of the past 2 decades press down on my shoulders. All those sleepless nights, all those hospital visits, all those moments when I held Mom's hand while she forgot my name, when I changed Dad's sheets at 3 a.m., when I sacrificed every dream I ever had to be their caregiver. Did any of it even matter now? Before we go into the story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now, let's get right in the story. I never planned to become a full-time caregiver. Nobody really does. It just happens, slowly, then all at once. One day your parents are independent, vibrant, the people you call when you need advice. The next, you're fielding calls from their doctors, reorganizing your entire life around their decline. Cindy had already made her choice by then. She'd left in the 90s, chasing bigger dreams in a bigger city, and I couldn't blame her for that. She'd call on birthdays, maybe show up for Christmas every few years with expensive gifts that felt more like apologies than gestures of love. But when Mom started forgetting where she'd put her keys, when Dad's hands started shaking too much to button his own shirt, Cindy wasn't the one who got those 3 a.m. phone calls. I was. So I stayed. The daily grind of caregiving isn't glamorous. There are no medals, no one applauding when you successfully get your father to take his medication without a fight. It's doctor appointments that blur together, learning medical terminology you never wanted to know, 17 alarms on your phone for different medications. It's sleepless nights, listening for sounds from the other room, a fall, a cry for help, the silence that's somehow worse. It's watching the people who raised you, who taught you how to tie your shoes, slowly become people who need you to help them do those same things. The role reversal is cruel in its inevitability. I put my life on pause. There was a man once, someone who might have been important, but how do you build a relationship when you can't commit to dinner plans because your mother might have a bad night? He stopped calling eventually, and I understood. My 30s slipped away, then my 40s started doing the same. The dreams I'd had, traveling, maybe starting my own business, simple things like sleeping through an entire night, they all went into a box labeled someday that I knew would probably never be opened, but there were moments that made it bearable, beautiful, heartbreaking moments that I wouldn't trade for anything. Like the time Dad grabbed my hand during one of his worst days, when the pain medication wasn't working and fear clouded his eyes, and he whispered, "I don't know what we'd do without you." Or when Mom, in one of her increasingly rare moments of clarity, looked at me and said, "You're such a good daughter." And I could see she really meant it, really saw me. Those moments were scattered like diamonds in the rough, rare, precious, and somehow worth all the struggle surrounding them. The way Dad would smile when I'd make his favorite soup, even though his appetite was nearly gone. How Mom would hum old songs while I brushed her hair, transported back to some happier time that existed only in the corners of her fading memory. The small acts of love that nobody else witnessed, that couldn't be quantified or measured or put on a resume. I never did it for recognition. That's the truth. I did it because they were my parents, and you don't abandon the people who gave you life. You don't walk away when things get hard, when the person who once changed your diapers now needs you to help them in their most vulnerable moments. That's not duty. Or maybe it is, but it's the kind of duty that's inseparable from love, the kind that doesn't keep score or expect applause. I did it because someone had to, and I was the only one there, and for 20 years, that was enough. The conversation happened on a Tuesday afternoon in 2007, the kind of unremarkable spring day that ends up changing everything. Dad asked me to sit with him in the living room, and something about his tone made my stomach tighten. He had that look, the one that meant he'd been thinking about something serious. "Emma," he started, his hands trembling slightly. Not from age, from emotion. "You've given up so much for us, your whole life, really. And I know we don't say it enough, but we see it. Every single day, we see what you're doing." I tried to brush it off, but he held up his hand to stop me. "I want to make sure you're taken care of, that you'll always have a home, security." He pulled out papers he'd been keeping beside his chair. "I've talked to a notary. I want to transfer the house into your name, legally, so you never have to worry." The weight of what he was offering hit me all at once. This wasn't just a house. It was every memory within these walls, every holiday, every childhood moment. It was security and validation, proof that someone had noticed. "Dad, you don't have to." "I want to," he said firmly. "You've earned this." "Emma." The trip to the notary's office felt surreal. Dad signed the documents with his careful signature, and just like that, the house was mine. Walking out, I felt gratitude and responsibility settling onto my shoulders. This wasn't just a gift, it was a promise between us. I held on to that feeling for 18 years. When Dad died in March 2025, the grief was a tidal wave I'd been expecting, but wasn't prepared for. The house felt impossibly empty without him. And then his lawyer handed me the letter. I recognized his handwriting immediately, shakier than it used to be, but still his. I waited until I was alone to read it, sitting in his favorite chair that still smelled faintly of his aftershave. The letter explained everything again. Why he'd signed the house over to me, how he'd watched me sacrifice my youth, my opportunities, my life to care for them. Reading his words through tears, I felt that validation again. He'd seen me. But then the letter took an unexpected turn. He wrote about Cindy, how she'd been adopted in 1966, something I'd never known. The words sat stark on the page, a secret he'd carried for nearly 60 years. He asked me to provide her with reasonable compensation, to make sure she was treated fairly, even though the house was legally mine. I read that line 3 times. Reasonable compensation. A few $1,000s, 10,000. Whatever it was, I was ready. Fair was fair. Cindy was still my sister, and she deserved something. I folded the letter carefully and pressed it against my chest. The grief was overwhelming, but beneath it was clarity. I could honor his wishes. I could give Cindy a fair portion, close this chapter with dignity, and we could both move forward. Maybe this could even rebuild some kind of relationship between us. I was so naive to think it would be that simple. I had no idea that Dad's letter, meant to create peace, would be the first domino in a chain reaction that would tear apart everything I thought I knew. But in that moment, sitting in his chair with his letter in my hands, I believed in the possibility of resolution. I believed that love and fairness could win. I believed we could honor him together. The call came 3 days after the funeral. I was still in that fog of grief, moving through the world like I was underwater. I saw Cindy's name on my phone and felt a flutter of hope. Maybe we could comfort each other, share memories, be sisters in our shared loss. "Cindy, hi, I'm glad we need to talk about the house." Her voice was ice. No greeting, no acknowledgement that we'd just buried our father, just business. "Okay, I was going to reach out about Dad's letter. He asked me to make sure you got reasonable compensation, and I want to honor that half." I blinked. "What?" "Half the value of the house. That's reasonable compensation. The house is worth 6 million yuan. That's 3 million for me. 420,000 US dollars. The number hit like a physical blow. "Cindy, that's not reasonable. That's half of everything." "Exactly. You got everything, Emma. The house, their care, their time. I got nothing. That's not fair." You got nothing? You chose to leave, Cindy. You chose to build your life somewhere else. I stayed. I gave up 20 years. While I was, living my life? Should I be punished for that? Dad signed that house over without consulting me. He signed it over because I earned it, because I was there. Well, now it's time to share. 3 million yuan, Emma. I tried to stay calm, to be reasonable. Cindy, listen. What if I gave you 200,000 won? That's almost $30,000. That's more than fair. For what? For being adopted? For not being the favorite? For not playing martyr for 20 years? The word martyr landed like a slap. I know my rights, Emma. I know what the law says. Give me what I'm owed or I'll take you to court. Dad just died. We just buried him and you're threatening to sue me? I'm not threatening. I'm telling you what's going to happen. You have 1 week. Then my lawyer gets involved. Cindy, please. The line went dead. That first call set the pattern. Each conversation got worse, more hostile, until they weren't conversations at all, just screaming matches and accusations. She called me greedy, manipulative. She told anyone who would listen that I'd taken advantage of our dying parents, that I'd isolated them from her, poisoned them against her to secure my inheritance. None of it was true, but she was building a narrative, painting me as the villain in a story where I'd thought I was doing the right thing. Every phone call ended with her hanging up. Every text was an ultimatum or accusation. The sister I'd grown up with was gone. In her place was someone I didn't recognize, someone who saw me as an obstacle between her and money. She was erasing 20 years of my life with her lies, taking every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment I'd spent caring for our parents and reframing it as greed, as manipulation, as theft. The grief of losing Dad was crushing, but losing my sister to her bitterness, that was a different kind of death, and somehow it hurt even more. You expect to lose your parents eventually, but you never expect your sister to become your enemy. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by courier. I knew what it was before I opened it. You develop an instinct for bad news, and this had that weight, the kind that sits in your stomach like a stone. Cindy was suing me. The legal papers were dense with terminology I didn't understand, but the core argument was clear. She was contesting the 2007 property transfer. Her lawyer claimed the notarization was invalid because our mother hadn't signed it. Only Dad had. Therefore, the house should never have been transferred to me. It should be considered part of Dad's estate and split equally between us. I read the documents 3 times, hands shaking harder with each pass. This wasn't just about money. She was trying to erase what Dad had done, to invalidate his choice. She was saying those 20 years didn't matter. I couldn't afford a lawyer. The bitter irony. I owned a multi-million yuan house, but barely had enough savings to fight for it. Caregiving doesn't pay well. I'd burned through what little I'd saved on medical expenses. I took out a loan against the house and hired the best attorney I could manage. His name was Mr. Chen. This is going to get ugly, he told me. Your sister's team is going to paint you in the worst possible light. I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. The court filings started arriving, each worse than the last. Cindy's lawyers described me as manipulative, calculating, someone who had isolated our parents from their other daughter. They claimed I'd taken advantage of their declining mental state. One document used the word predatory. They were creating a version of me that didn't exist, a monster who'd spent 2 decades not out of love, but greed. Every act of care was reframed as calculation. The narrative would have been laughable if it wasn't so devastating. Going through documents was torture. Mr. Chen needed proof of everything: medical records, bank statements, photographs. I had to dig through years of paperwork, relive every hospital visit, every decline, grieving and defending myself simultaneously, doing neither well. The depositions were worse. Sitting in sterile conference rooms while Cindy's lawyer asked questions designed to make me look bad. Isn't it true you discouraged your sister from visiting? Did you discuss the transfer while your father was on pain medication? Every question felt like an accusation. I stopped sleeping. Every night I'd lie awake, replaying conversations with my parents, questioning things I'd said years ago, wondering if somehow I'd done something wrong. The stress showed in my face, the weight I was losing, my trembling hands. Friends stopped calling. Some didn't know what to say. Others had heard Cindy's version and weren't sure who to believe. The isolation was crushing, but through it all, underneath the exhaustion and fear, there was something else. A core of stubborn determination that wouldn't bend. Cindy was trying to rewrite history, and I wasn't going to let her. Those 20 years had happened. My sacrifice had been real. Dad's choice had been made with clear mind and clear intention. No matter how many legal documents Cindy filed, the truth remained the truth. I wasn't going to let her turn my love into something dirty, my devotion into manipulation, my father's gratitude into fraud. I was going to fight, even if it broke me, even if it cost everything, because some things are worth fighting for, and the truth is one of them. Mr. Chen's office became my second home in the weeks before the hearing. The notarization documents from 2007 were clear, properly stamped and filed. Dad's signature was there, witnessed by a licensed notary. It should have been enough, but Cindy's lawyers had planted doubt. "We need more than documents," Mr. Chen explained. "We need to show the judge why your father made this decision." So I gathered evidence of a life I'd never thought I'd have to prove. Photographs from those 20 years, me helping Dad into his wheelchair, Mom and I in her garden, Christmas dinners where I was the only one who showed up. Each photo felt like reliving every moment of joy and heartbreak. We collected testimony from neighbors who'd watched me come and go at all hours. Mrs. Wang, who'd seen me rushing out at midnight when Dad fell. Dr. Liu, who'd treated my parents for years. The pharmacy technician who knew me by name. All these people had witnessed my life, and now I needed them to validate it in court. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about the house. This was about having my entire existence validated. I needed a judge who'd never met my parents to understand that what I'd done mattered, that it was real, that it was worthy of recognition. The fear crept in during quiet moments. What if the judge didn't see it my way? What if Cindy's version, the cold narrative of manipulation, was somehow more convincing than the truth? Facts could be interpreted, twisted, presented in ways that changed their meaning. Cindy's confidence radiated through every legal communication. Her lawyers' emails were curt, assured, like they'd already won. Each motion chipped away at my resolve. I'd wonder if maybe I should just give her what she wanted. But then I'd remember Dad's face when he signed those documents, and I'd know I couldn't back down. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house in the dark, footsteps echoing. Everything was where it had always been. Dad's favorite chair by the window, still angled toward the light. Mom's garden visible through the kitchen, her roses still blooming because I'd learned to tend them. I ran my hands along the walls, feeling the wallpaper that had been there since childhood. These walls had witnessed everything. My first steps, my graduation, my parents' decline, countless ordinary moments. Every scratch told a story. This wasn't just property worth millions. This was the physical embodiment of a family, of love, of sacrifice. I sat in Dad's chair as dawn broke, watching light creep across the floor the same way it had every morning of my life. My hands shook, my stomach tight with anxiety. But underneath was something quieter, a determination that felt almost like peace. I didn't pray, but I made a wish into the silent house, into the walls that knew my truth. Please let them see it, please let them understand. Not just the legal facts, but the human reality beneath them. Please let them see that love and sacrifice can't be quantified in the court documents. But they're real nonetheless. The sun rose over Mom's garden, golden light touching the roses. And I stood up. Ready or not, today was the day. Today the truth would either be seen or buried under legal arguments. I had to believe it would be seen. I had to. Before we head into that courtroom, I have to ask, have you ever been completely betrayed by someone you were supposed to trust? Tell me your story in the comments. And if this is hitting home for you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories you won't forget. The courthouse was everything a place of judgment should be. Cold, impersonal, designed to strip away emotion. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh glare that made everyone look slightly ill. The air smelled of old paper and floor polish. I sat with Mr. Chen, hands folded to keep them from shaking. Across the aisle, Cindy sat with her lawyer, that infuriating smirk on her face. She looked like someone who'd already won. I was exhausted. Emotionally, physically, spiritually. I just wanted it to end. The judge entered, older, his face carved with lines from years of hearing people's worst moments. He gestured for us to begin. Mr. Chen presented our case. The 2007 notarization was valid, properly executed. He showed photographs of my caregiving, read testimony from neighbors and doctors. It sounded so reasonable, so obvious. Then Cindy's lawyer stood up, and my stomach tightened. He talked about fairness and equal treatment. Both adopted daughters deserved equal shares. Then, with theatrical flourish, he produced documents. "Your Honor, the official household registration records," he announced. "These establish my client's legal status as the daughter of the deceased." Cindy's smirk widened. This was her ace. The judge took the documents, face unreadable. Heavy silence. I watched him read, heart pounding, every second stretched into eternity. The judge looked up, but not at Cindy's lawyer. His eyes found me. Not anger, not judgment. Pity. "These documents," he began slowly, "confirm the adoption referenced in the deceased's letter, the first adoption of the plaintiff in 1966. We know this already, I thought, Dad told us. However, these records also show a second adoption." Time stopped. The words didn't make sense. What second adoption? The voice was mine, strange and distant. The judge's eyes held mine, full of terrible pity. "Your adoption, Ms. Sun. According to these records, you were also adopted in 1968. The world tilted. Me? Adopted? No. Impossible. I was their daughter, their biological daughter. The one who stayed, the one who belonged, the one whose blood connection made the sacrifice meaningful. I was Emma's son, daughter of... But I wasn't. Government records, official stamps. The same proof used for Cindy's adoption, only now establishing mine, my entire identity. The foundation I'd built my life on evaporated in a single sentence. Everything I'd thought I knew about myself, about who I was, collapsed. I wasn't who I thought I was. I'd never been who I thought I was. I looked at Cindy. Her smirk was gone, her face pale, eyes wide with shock. This wasn't what she'd meant to uncover. She'd been trying to prove we were both their daughters, that she deserved her share. Instead, she'd proven we were both adopted. Both! I couldn't breathe. My hands shook, vision blurring with tears I couldn't control. 52 years. I'd lived 52 years believing I knew who I was. And in one sentence, all of it was gone. Every certainty, every piece of my identity was now tainted with this truth I'd never known. The parents who raised me weren't my biological parents. The blood I thought connected us was a fiction. The sacrifice I'd made was for... No. The love was real. The love had to be real. But the story I'd told myself my whole life? That was a lie. The courtroom had gone silent, except for my sobbing. I could feel everyone watching, hear whispers starting, sense the weight of pity pressing down. Mr. Chen's hand was on my shoulder, but I couldn't feel it. I couldn't feel anything except the gaping void where my sense of self used to be. Who was I, if I wasn't who I'd always thought I was? Who was I? The judge called for a recess. Mr. Chen guided me out, his hand on my elbow. Someone brought me water. I stared at the cup without drinking. Who am I if I'm not who I thought I was? The question circled in my mind, relentless and consuming. For 52 years, I'd been Emma's son, biological child, blood relation. That identity had shaped every decision, every sacrifice. I'd stayed because they were my parents. I'd given up everything because that's what you do for the people who gave you life. But they hadn't given me life. Strangers had. People whose names I didn't know, whose faces I'd never seen, who'd given me away when I was... what? A baby? A toddler? All those years of caregiving, 20 years, had I been doing it for people who weren't really mine? No, that wasn't right. They were mine. They'd raised me, loved me, but the story I'd told myself, the narrative that had given meaning to every sacrifice, that was built on a foundation that never existed. The love was real. I had to believe that. The love was real, but the story was a lie. Who were my biological parents? Why did they give me up? Why didn't Mom and Dad ever tell me? What else had been a lie? The questions came faster than I could process them. each opening new wounds. When we returned to the courtroom, I moved like a ghost. The judge explained inheritance law through the fog in my mind. Under Chinese law, adopted children have the same inheritance rights as biological children. Cindy's lawyer leaned forward. The revelation had created what she wanted, a level playing field. Both adopted, both equal. But the judge continued. However, the 2007 property transfer remains valid. The notarization was properly executed. Because the deceased transferred ownership years before his death, the house is not part of his estate. A pause. I watched the words register on Cindy's face. Shock, then anger. The plaintiff's lawsuit is dismissed. The property remains with the defendant. I'd won. On paper, I'd won. The courtroom stirred with murmurs. Mr. Chen squeezed my shoulder, relief on his face. Across the aisle, Cindy's lawyer spoke urgently to her. She looked stricken, her earlier confidence shattered. She'd lost the lawsuit, but more than that, she'd lost her singular claim to victimhood. She'd thought she was special, the adopted one, the one treated unfairly. Instead, she'd discovered she wasn't alone. We were both outsiders, both given away by people we'd never know. I should have felt relief, vindication, triumph. Instead, just numbness. I'd kept the house, but what did that mean now? Every room would remind me of a life I'd thought I'd lived. I'd won the legal battle, but lost something more fundamental, the understanding of who I was. The judge recommended mediation to reach a settlement, to find closure. His voice carried compassion that suggested he understood this wasn't really about property anymore. Cindy stood abruptly, her chair scraping. She didn't look at me as she left, radiating defeat and anger. For a moment, I wanted to call out to her. We'd both just had our worlds destroyed by the same secret. We should have been allies in this confusion. But we'd spent too long being enemies. The damage was done. Mr. Chen helped me gather my things. People congratulated me, told me this was a good outcome. I nodded mechanically. Yes, I'd won. Yes, I'd kept the house. Yes, the law was on my side. But I'd lost myself. And there's no legal remedy for that. The mediation sessions took place in a neutral office with beige walls and dust-gathering artificial plants. Cindy and I sat on opposite sides, a mediator between us like a buffer zone. We were civil, painfully, artificially civil. We addressed the mediator, spoke through lawyers, maintained the fiction that we were reasonable people. But we both knew the truth. We were two women whose identities had been shattered by the same secret. And instead of finding common ground, we'd let the damage push us apart. I watched Cindy during those sessions. She looked different, smaller, less certain. The confident smirk was gone, replaced by something brittle. She was processing her own crisis. She'd thought she was special, the only adopted one. Now she knew she wasn't. The thought should have brought us together. Instead, it was just another thing to resent. My client maintains the settlement should reflect the value of what was lost, Cindy's lawyer said, professionally detached. I wanted to laugh. What was the price of learning your entire life was a lie? But I was too tired to laugh. Too exhausted to do anything but calculate. What is peace worth? What would I pay to end this, to buy my way out of her anger? Cindy was still angry about the house, the secret, Dad choosing me. I could see it in her jaw. The revelation hadn't softened her. 550,000 when, I said, interrupting the lawyers. 78,000 US dollars. The room went quiet. Cindy's eyes finally met mine, searching for weakness or triumph. She'd find neither. It's not about the money. This is about ending the war. Take it or leave it. The number was less than what Dad suggested, far less than Cindy had demanded. But it was meaningful. Cindy stared at me. Something shifted, not forgiveness, but exhausted resignation. Fine, she said, flat and emotionless. Her lawyer tried to negotiate, but Cindy cut him off. This was about drawing a line under everything. The paperwork took weeks to finalize. Legal documents, bank transfers, official stamps, and signatures. The mediator tried to encourage us to talk, to find closure beyond financial settlement. We both declined. The final signing happened on a Tuesday afternoon, the same kind of unremarkable day as when Dad had signed the house over to me 18 years ago. Cindy signed first, her signature quick and sharp. I signed second, my hand steadier than I expected. We pushed the papers across to the mediator. It was done. No apologies were exchanged. No acknowledgement of the pain we'd both caused and suffered. No sisterly reconciliation. No tearful embrace. No promise to rebuild what we'd destroyed. Just signatures and silence and the sound of papers being filed away. Cindy stood first. She picked up her purse, looked at me one last time, not with anger now, just profound emptiness, and walked out. Her lawyer followed, the door closing with a soft click that felt impossibly final. I sat there for a moment longer, staring at the closed door, thinking about the sister I'd had and the stranger she'd become, how we'd started as family and ended as adversaries, how a secret meant to stay buried had detonated everything we'd ever been to each other. The mediator was saying something about moving forward, but I wasn't listening. I was thinking about the cost of peace, $78,000 and one sister. Some prices are too high, even when you have to pay them anyway. The house is quiet now, not peaceful quiet, but heavy silence from too many ghosts. I walk through these rooms alone, and sometimes wonder if winning was worth what it cost. The photos are still on the walls, Mom in her garden, Dad in his chair, me at various ages. For months after the revelation, I couldn't look at them without feeling they were lies. Do they mean less because there's no blood connection? No. The love was real. The memories were real. They chose me every day after, and I chose them back. I spent months asking who I was, spiraling in the existential void. The answer, when it came, was almost disappointingly simple. I'm still Emma, the daughter who cared, the woman who showed up. Biology didn't make me that person. Choice did. Love did. That's what I've learned. Family isn't defined by genetics, but by who shows up, who stays, who loves through hard moments. The house isn't just property. It's the container of real memories and real love. Cindy's greed cost her more than the lawsuit. It cost her a sister. She wanted money and vindication, and lost the only person who understood what it meant to be adopted by the Sons. My sacrifice wasn't wasted. It was meaningful because it was chosen. I gave 20 years not because genetics forced me to, but because I loved them. But the cost. Cindy and I are strangers now, complete strangers. No holidays, no phone calls, no birthday wishes. The relationship isn't damaged, it's gone. The secret that was meant to give her leverage destroyed us both. We shared parents but couldn't share grace. We couldn't share understanding. Only rage and resentment and pain. I pulled out Dad's letter again last week. He asked me to give Cindy reasonable compensation. I did. I gave her $78,000 and my forgiveness, though she never asked for either. He asked me to treat her fairly. I did. But she didn't want fairness. She wanted vengeance. She wanted to punish me for staying, for being there, for earning the house through sacrifice she wasn't willing to make. And in pursuing that vengeance, she detonated the bomb that destroyed us both. The inheritance was settled, the lawyers were paid, the papers signed, the money transferred, but the family, that was lost forever. So I'll ask you, was it fair? After everything, the years of care, the courtroom revelation, the settlement, was any of it fair? Who was really in the wrong? Cindy, for demanding what she thought she deserved. Me, for fighting to keep what Dad gave me. Our parents, for keeping the secret. Or was it just life, unfair and complicated? And here's the question that keeps me up. If you discovered everything you believed about yourself was a lie, could you forgive the person who exposed it? Could you look at the sister who accidentally detonated your entire identity and find compassion instead of blame? I don't have the answer. I thought I could forgive Cindy, could separate her intentions from the outcome. But sitting here in this quiet house, surrounded by memories both precious and complicated, I honestly don't know. What I do know, I'm Emma. I'm the daughter of the Sons, adopted or not. I'm the woman who stayed, who sacrificed, who loved with everything I had. The house is mine, but so is the grief and the confusion and the complicated legacy of a secret that should never have been kept. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that has to be enough. Because it's all I have left. So that's my story, the inheritance that cost me my identity and my sister. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. I need to know. Do you think I was wrong to fight for the house? Should I have just given Cindy what she wanted? And if you found out you were adopted after 50 years, would it change how you felt about the people who raised you? Let me know in the comments. And if this story moved you, please subscribe, because truth really is stranger than fiction.